barrels, bananas, and more spin-offs you can shake an ostrich at. This hero is bigger, faster, and stronger too. He's the first member of the DK crew. I mean, I had to work that in somewhere. That's right, this week's episode is all about Donkey Kong. Make sure to guard your bananas. There's some treachery afoot. In the Donkey Kong canon, there are lots of apes. There are gorillas, chimps, and baboons. There are cranky ones, tiny ones, and even ones that make me feel uncomfortable on so many different levels. And so it behooves us to clarify which Kong we're talking about today. The DK that you and I know of today is pretty much a new character in relation to his arcade cabinet counterparts. From what we know of Nintendo's offerings when it comes to the character, he's a descendant of the OG DK and DK Jr. This comes from the fact that the DK we know of is referred to as Cranky's grandson. And this makes sense because the manual for Donkey Kong Country, which this timeline comes from, refers to DK as a new character altogether. The red tie one. You know, that one. This lets us know, in fact, that this Donkey Kong is not the one that captured Pauline all those years ago. But leave it to Rare to jack up a timeline. Beginning in the American version of Donkey Kong 64, DK is, from what I can tell, mistakenly referred to as Cranky's son as opposed to his grandson. However, later games like Smash Bros. Brawl and DKC Returns confirmed that Cranky is DK's grandfather. The original DK is indeed Cranky Kong, who has since retired from his kidnapping days, which is good. That's good. But this is why we're going to be focusing on Donkey Kong Country, as this is literally where the character we're speaking on comes from. Rareware, the people we've affectionately forgiven for giving us Battletoads, was given the responsibility of creating and developing a spin-off game for the character of Donkey Kong. They were given this project after Nintendo had seen Rare's work with 3D sprites done through Silicon Graphics. After receiving the project, Rare put 12 devs to work, and by the end of an 18-month development project, Donkey Kong Country was born. During the development, however, there were apparently a lot of things that went on behind the scenes that turned our current DK into the character that we know today. In 1994's port of Donkey Kong on the Game Boy, Donkey Kong was given a tie, so Rare decided to implement this accessory into DK's new design. Another interesting story is that Rare staff members actually went to a local zoo to watch gorillas, do gorilla things. They paid special attention to how the gorillas moved, and they wanted to use that movement within the game itself. They noticed rather quickly that the gorillas didn't move in a way that would produce a conducive and quickly moving game, so they used horse gallops for their cycles instead. And boy, how did this game sell. The game did extremely well upon release and quickly became a success in its first holiday when it sold 6 million copies. This naturally led to the creation of 2 direct sequels to this game. The second game was designed with the same graphics engine, unfortunately for those of you who really enjoy a challenge, because the new game really upped the difficulty. This second title went by the name of Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. Am I reading that right? Oh, I get it. Diddy's Conquest. Alright, Rare. I'll give you that one. Just that one, though. Still I remember Battletoads. No. Next up was Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, a less cleverly titled game. This game, while being critically praised, was actually released at a poor time. This was because the Nintendo 64 was all anyone was really talking about at the time.
Resplendent, avant-garde, bourgeois. What do any of these mean? It doesn't matter because this is a perfume commercial. Nothing has to make sense. Jungle by Dixie. It'll drive him bananas.
Developed in order to bring back the might of the Donkey Kong Country franchise, Donkey Kong Country Returns started development in 2008. No longer affiliated with Rare, Nintendo turned to Retro Studios. Retro had already proven their ability to transform franchises with their work on Metroid Prime. In this title, despite Miyamoto's opposition, the game included a 2-player option. Due to some complications during development, however, almost all the game had to be rewritten. By the time the game was set to be revealed, Retro still had work to do on about 70 levels. But all that work that had to been done was worth it. Critics and audiences loved this game. And after the renewed success of the franchise, Retro took another go with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which now that I think about it, sounds like a really tasty drink. Now, with that experience under their belt, the team was finally able to add aspects of the game they'd wanted to implement in the previous title. For example, Tropical Freeze now contained underwater segments as well as 3D camera angles. And it too was received very well, even garnering a 10 out of 10 from Destructoid. Now that's how you monkey around.
Get ready for the hippest ape of them all.
Look out, you beauties,
Hey Abby, have you seen... What are you watching? I wish I could tell you. You know, one minute you're sitting here watching a video on how to make wontons, and the next thing you know, you're just watching this.
Coconut.
I can't believe I gave the crystal coconut to a couple of the bad guys.
So as I said, this DK's lore really began in Rare's Donkey Kong Country in 1994. In this game, Donkey Kong's nephew Diddy Kong was assigned to guard duty over DK's stash of bananas. DK tells Diddy that he'll be coming back to take over for him, but he never does. When DK does eventually come back, he finds that Diddy has been taken by King K. Rool's minions, as well as his entire stash of bananas. So, DK sets out to find his friend, get his bananas back, and defeat King K. Rool. In 1995, Donkey Kong Country 2 was released and followed a different plot. Dubbed Diddy's Kong Quest, the game followed both he and his girlfriend Dixie in their attempt to rescue Donkey Kong from King K. Rool. King K. Rool found the best way to ensure that his banana heist would go well the next time he attempted it was to make sure that he got rid of his biggest opposition, being DK. He took DK and left a ransom note in his place. The game setting now takes place on Crocodile Isle as opposed to the original setting from the first game. The third Donkey Kong game, dubbed Dixie's Double Trouble, released in 1996. DK and Diddy were hanging out in their hammocks sipping on banana milkshakes, which in and of itself brings up so many questions about electricity and the availability of milk and ice cream on an island. But that's neither here nor there. Well, they go missing, and Dixie meets up with her cousin Kiddy Kong, and the two take off to find the two missing members of the DK crew. Donkey Kong himself becomes playable in the Donkey Kong Country series once again, nearly a decade and a half later, in Donkey Kong Country Returns. This revival finds DK and Diddy fighting against the Tiki Tak tribe. These are a group of, let's say, monsters. I'm not really sure how to describe sentient tikis. Anyway, this tribe uses their powers to hypnotize the island's animals and use that mind control to, of course, steal DK's bananas. But I mean, these things don't seem to need to eat. I mean, why would they? They're floating tikis. Well, it turns out the tribe has been stealing the bananas in order to form even more tikis. This could possibly be an attempt to build an army so they could spread their havoc. The latest in the Donkey Kong Country series follows Donkey Kong and the gang as they deal with a new threat, the Snowmads. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze dropped in February of 2014. DK's crew were all having a good old time, just like they normally do when a group of Snowmads attack their island with their magical ice dragon. Which makes sense because what would you use? The group of them, now including Cranky Kong, were blown away from DK Island. Now, from what I've found, it doesn't seem as though they have a motivation outside of sheer imperialism. I mean, that never stopped the Europeans, so I guess it should work for penguins. There was a vague subplot involving the sacrifice of a banana in one scene, but I mean, that's like the only semblance of motivation this game gave to its villains. So, there's that. But I mean, they're like birds, so I don't want to give them too much credit. Maybe Retro realized that the days of solely doing evil for the sake of bananas is a little played out.
Run.
DK is honestly one of my favorite characters. I've never thought of him as a side character when it comes to Nintendo. I've always thought that he could pull a crowd of his own, and he definitely did. I also think there's been a lot more space between his games as of late, and maybe that's a good thing because the quality has been astronomical. And due to the Donkey Kongs of the past, DK has a strong relationship with the Mario franchise. He appears as a regular in Mario spin-offs like Mario Kart, Mario Party, and even Mario vs. Sonic. The pair even has a series of games that feature the two of them in a competitive setting yet again. We can definitely see that Nintendo isn't ready to retire this ape just yet, and I'm really glad to know that. In the hands of a capable studio like Retro, I mean, the sky's the limit. I'm really excited to see where they take the franchise next. I think we need to give Donkey Kong a shotgun again. I think that was fun, that was a nice little thing that they did, and I think it should happen again. Why not? I mean, just to see Donkey Kong in a 3D range again, that blows my mind. I mean, who doesn't want more advanced fur physics? You know, for science. Anyways, thanks for watching, and stay perfect.